It's day 4 of the Superbet Rapid and Blitz event in Warsaw. And after 3 days of incredibly fighting chess in the Rapid, we move on now to the Blitz portion. Time control is 5 minutes plus 2 seconds increment. And in this video, I'm going to present you the game played between Praggnanandhaa and world's #1 Magnus Carlsen. And what a game it was! Magnus said afterwards he was not happy with his performance today, scoring 6 points out of 9 games. I would say not a bad score. He, of course, has higher standards, is expecting more from himself. He said he didn't have his day, even though he felt good from the start. He, during the game or after the game, he felt like his nerve system collapsed. And that's quite remarkable for someone with such a big experience. But fighting against these youngsters is not easy at all. As we will see in this game, Magnus, very critical of himself, said that after this game his chess sucked, honestly. Well, that's quite a statement. But we all remember Magnus having also other good quotes from the past. We remember one which he said after a disappointing result, that I still suck at chess. I just suck a little less than others. Well, these are Magnus, his words. Anyway, let's see how much he sucks in this game. I'm very curious to see what is happening, guys. Let's check it out. Prag opens the game here with 1 e4. It's a fast time control, 5+2, as I said. So we will go very quickly through it also. It's a Caro-Kann, not a big surprise. Fighting opening, very cool choice, of course. d4, d5, pawn takes d5, cd5, the exchange variation. Bishop d3, knight c6, c3, protecting the pawn on d4. And here Magnus plays the move e6. Very often people first try to develop their bishop somehow, maybe knight f6 and then bishop g4. But here Magnus has some experience with this exact setup. Bishop f4, now he gets out the bishop to d6. Bishops are going to be exchanged. Bishop takes, queen takes, knight f3, and he does put its knight on e7, which may look strange. A lot of people would put it on f6, but Magnus has a clear idea. Both sides are castling here. Rook goes to e1, and he puts the bishop on d7. And in fact, this was played in an earlier game by Magnus at the Olympiad in 2022. He's playing with the black pieces against Daniele Focatura, Italian grandmaster. In that game there followed the move knight e5. Why didn't get much out of the opening? It was a fighting game, ended in a draw. Magnus was ready to repeat it. But here, knight bd2 was played. But now with the next move, f6, you see that black is trying to get a grip on the e5 square. So white is no longer able to put a knight on e5. And on a good day, black will try to break in the center, getting beautiful pawns on d5 and e5. That's the main idea of black's play. Therefore, white goes here for the move b4. So the idea is that if black ever plays the move e5, you can hit the knight on c6, kicking the knight away. And that's very annoying for black, because the knight needs to support that pawn on e5, because white is controlling the e5 square with pawn, knight and rook. Therefore, black refrains from playing that pawn break e5, goes for b6, white goes a4, rook ac8. Here you see that black is trying to put some pressure against that pawn on c3. White indirectly defends the pawn with a rook on e3. Bishop e8. What is this bishop gonna do? Because after queen e1, you see that queen and rook are attacking the pawn on e6. Bishop f7. Bishop, is it really much better on f7 than on d7? I think so. Not too much maybe, but later on, who knows, the bishop can come to a more active square. But for now, at least the rooks are connected. a5 played. White is trying to shift the attention to the other side of the board. And now the knight comes to f5, hitting the rook on e3. Rook goes back. Knight c e7. So knight is supporting the other one. And more importantly, the pawn on c3 is under attack. So knight f1. So that means the queen is guarding that pawn on c3, queen d7. So probably at some point the knight can come to d6 and try to clamp down on one of these weak squares, c4 or e4. Pawn takes pawn, black recaptures, knight to g3, and indeed the knight goes back to d6, rook a6, attacking the pawn on b6. Black defends it here with a rook. White played the move h4, grabbing space, not really looking for an attack on that side of the board, but at least you always have the possibility of putting your king on h2, or probably the pawn can even come further. Rook fe8, so the rook needs to support the pawn on e6, rook a2, rook e2 to a2, knight ef5. So here you see that the rook is protecting the pawn, but also after rook a7, white attacks the queen. Black does block it with its rook. Everything still rock solid for black. Knight takes knight, and here, interesting moment, pawn takes back. So here the rook opens up on the queen. Queen gotta move away. Or, wait a second, rook a8 is played. That's a cool move because the rook is pinned. Cannot capture the queen, because then the black king will get into a check. So the rook goes back. Obviously, now rook takes e1 is a threat, but white goes queen a1. So here you see white is controlling the a file, but all these rooks are going to be swapped on a8. Black even offers the exchange on the exchange of queens. If that happens, okay, you can say white has a majority on the queen side, but this pawn can never really come forward. So black is absolutely fine here if pieces are going to be swapped. And instead, white says, my queen is more active than yours. I put the queen on a7 to keep an eye on that pawn. Queen goes to d8 to protect it. Knight to d2. And here, I think a lot of interesting options. But what should black do in general? Well, hard to say what is the best move, but you do have an extra pawn on the king side. So very often in these Caro-Kann type of structures, you will try to generate some activity, maybe with g5 at some point. Maybe you can prepare it with h6 or play f4 first. Hard to say what is best, but I don't think you are in a rush. But Magnus, he wanted to clarify the situation. Played here the move knight e4, offering the exchange of knights. But interesting decision as bishop takes e4 is played. Getting an imbalance of knight versus bishop. How to take back? Maybe you can take with the d-pawn. So this bishop will be activated, stopping white's pawns in the center. Later on, black can also try to push its kingside majority. Very double-edged position. Instead, f takes e4 was played, so Magnus wants to undouble his pawns. Knight to f1. And the knight is on its way to e3. But first, f5 is played, so that pawn is coming to f4. White goes g3 to control the f4 square. And now the move h6. Various interesting options here, but it seems to me that after something like knight e3, white is in really good shape, having pressure against these two weak pawns. Also the pawn on b6. I mean, everything is still defended here if black puts the bishop on e6, but it's clear that black needs to be very careful. Instead, there followed the move queen to b7, which is a small improvement of the queen. But Magnus had a big opportunity here. He could have gone for the move f4. Was obviously a move he considered, trying to weaken the kingside formation. He didn't play it in the end. Not really sure why. Maybe he was thinking the pawn on b6 is hanging, and then this pawn is potentially very dangerous. But you can give a bunch of checks, and white's king is very open. If you block with a knight, there's queen takes f4, and e3 will come next to tickle the support of the knight on g3, and black is having more than enough counterplay. It takes way too long for white to promote one of its pawns on the queen side. So anyway, didn't happen. Black pushed here with the move g5. Pawn takes g5, hg5. And I should point out that around this point, Magnus, I mean both players in fact, they had around 15 seconds left on the clock. So this is just also a matter of nerves. Who has the stronger nerves at this point? And it really helps not even to have an objectively a better position, but try to play for the initiative. Who can seize the initiative? Are these pawns really strong, or will the black king become more vulnerable? Well, first things first, white activates the knight to hit the pawn on f5. Bishop e6, and now the queen to c6. Very important, guys, to generate new threats, keeping the opponent busy. Bishop is under threat, black protects it, and probably this is what Magnus had been anticipating, but getting lower on time. I'm pretty sure he overlooked or underestimated white's next move, because here c4 is an excellent practical try to open up the center, attacking the pawn on d5 with pawn, queen and knight. D takes c4 played, and now the pawn goes to d5. Another threat. Black is being forced to go backwards, attacking the bishop. Bishop d7, and here the queen comes in to the other side. This is very difficult to handle with all pawns being under an attack, but there are a bunch of checks coming in as well. Queen f6, black wants to trade off queens, obviously. White's not interested. Queen to h7 check. And here, once again, big moment, what to do. King e8 was played. Objectively, best move is queen g7. Must have been seen by Magnus, but it means that he's going to lose the pawn on c4. But the interesting thing is here, what you need to do is activate your king. Even if you give up your b pawn, you block the passed pawn on the b file with your bishop, and the king comes in. Despite being a pawn down, black is too active and will definitely hold a draw here. But king e8 was played to defend the bishop, but now it's queen g8 check. King goes to e7, and now it's knight takes c4 with a big threat that if, for instance, black plays a move like b5, there is d6 check. And the king can't go anywhere because the queen also covers the e6 square and all the squares on the back rank. Black will be forced to give up the queen. So instead of b5, bishop b5 is played to attack the knight. And after d6, now the king can go to d7. However, there is knight takes b6 because the queen no longer defends the pawn. King is in trouble. You got to solve the check. But queen takes d5 with a double attack on the king and bishop. King c7. Queen takes b5. Queen takes b6. And, well, if you get a pawn endgame, the b pawn will be lost very soon. But the problem is that it's not the end of the line. There is queen takes f5, queen takes b4, queen takes g5. It's a queen endgame. We know that queen endgames are always very tricky. But here, white is a full pawn up. His king is safer. And I think also the pawn on e4 is a potential weakness. But more importantly, white has a very simple plan of pushing his g-pawn here. King to d7, queen f4. Nice move, keeping an eye on the pawn, cutting off the king. So next plan is to push the g-pawn. King e6, first the king will be improved. King g2, getting out of any annoying potential check. Queen d4, centralizing the queen. But what is black gonna do? This position is played with seconds on the clock. But every move, players are getting a bonus of 2 seconds. So it's very unlikely one of the players will lose on time. But still, is white able to convert it? Let's see how it unfolds. g4 is played. Queen d5, hoping to play e3 and give a discover the check. King g3, queen d3 check, king h4. The king is activated. The queen defends both pawns. Queen b1, queen f5, king e7, king h5. Just simple chess. Nice thing, you don't have to think here. Just play moves. Queen d3, g5, advancing the pawn. All the checks have been covered. Well, queen d1 is there, but king goes to g6. Queen d3, defending the pawn again. King g7. Okay, the king is not looking great because you want to push your pawn, but at least there are no good checks. If you play queen d4, there is queen f6. You do force the exchange of queens. So black instead played queen c4, queen e5. King is forced to go to the side. Now g6 is played. Everything under control still. Queen d3, queen f5, check again. King e7, queen f6, king d7, king g8. White is just making progress. g7 is next. e3. Why not just go for a simple exchange of pawns? Queen f7 played though. King d6. Now pawns are getting exchanged. Okay, logical move. Queen takes e3, g7. And normally, okay, if white really tries to get away with a king, they should follow a bunch of checks. But here, Magnus, with only seconds on the clock, he played queen e5. Trying to centralize the queen is normally a good thing in chess. But here, after king f8, all of a sudden, black realizes that the king is standing in the way. There are no checks here. And on the next move, it's g8 queen. Magnus Carlsen resigned against Praggnanandhaa. Very nice victory for the young Indian boy, 18 years old. Very cool game, but Magnus not happy with this game at all, obviously. Now, the thing is that Magnus, as I said, he has scored 6 out of 9, which is pretty cool. But there was one guy who was just simply scoring more, which is Vailly. 7.5 out of 9, plus 6. in the Blitz. That is just an incredible score. He's a machine. I will get back to him in some other videos very soon. But it also means that Magnus is now in the overall standings, the Rapid and Blitz combined. He's 2.5 points behind. Okay, there's still 9 games to be played tomorrow. And they, of course, have to play against each other again with reversed colors. So Magnus still does have a chance to beat Weiyi, but then Weiyi also needs to lose 1.5 points compared to Magnus. So let's see what is going to happen if Magnus is able to pull off another Magnus 9 out of 9, which he did, I think it was last year or 2 years ago in the Grand Chess Tour. Very impressive. He is able to crush everyone whenever it's needed. But if he's capable tomorrow, judging from the quality of his games today, not. But with Magnus, you never know. Just one good day, everything is possible. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of this game? And just hit the subscribe button, guys. Very much appreciated for all the support. I'll just keep on growing with you together. Thanks for watching. See you soon again. Bye bye.